Welcome to the third part of the traditional drop-in seat. Now this is the third and final part, and in this part we'll be putting on skin wadding and top fabric and the bottoming cloth. So if you remember last time we got to the stage of having our hair covered with calico. This is fire retardant calico, so you should be able to put a cover on this, although being hair underneath it doesn't necessarily have to be fire retardant, but I believe in being cautious, and so all my materials are fire retardant. What we're going to put on here next is a skin wadding, because when I run my hand over that I can very slightly feel little bits of hair poking through that calico, because after all we've only got calico on top of hair. So we're going to use a nice fine skin wadding, and we're going to cut it so that it fits. It's nice and smooth, very light, but it will stop. It is a hair barrier, and we're going to cut it so that the edge of it ends at the top of my wood. Now I'm doing that on the sides, on the back, but on the front I'm going to make it just go down over right to the edge of the wood, just in case anything's sticking out there where people put their legs. We don't want to put too much on the sides of the wood where it's going to drop into the chair, because otherwise it would be too tight for the frame and it will bust the frame. So we're just going to cut this down now so that it actually meets at the sides, the top of the wood, and at the front we've got one layer over. You want a nice sharp pair of scissors when you're doing this. Now do remember that when you press it on top with your fabric, it is actually going to push down the sides just a little bit more. We've got a tiny bit of hair inside our skin wadding here. I'm going to remove it. Yeah, sometimes happens. And get it to the back. And again cut it to the top of the wood. And then on the further side to the top of my wood frame. And it's only when I come to the front of the seat that I'm actually going to cut it to the edge of the wood there. Trying to do it so that you can see, which is a bit cack-handed, but I want you to get the idea of how I'm doing this. As you can see, skin wadding is very fine. It's got a piece of fine corovin, which is a type of polyester, on both sides that is very difficult to tear, but inside it has a very soft wadding which tears quite easily once that skin is off both sides, but it is a very fine soft type of wadding. The corners, I'm just taking a square piece out the corner there, because especially in this particular drop-in seat it's got a little piece out there, so I'm just taking that square corner out so that I don't jam up the corner when I put the fabric on. First of all, we've got to measure what size we want our fabric. And if you take your tape measure around your seat to your wood, a bit like we did with the calico, I make that 21 inches or 53 centimetres. And then the widest point in the width, measuring it in the same way, is 22 inches, 56 centimetres. The fabric I've chosen is a nice stripe. Now when you've got a stripe or any sort of pattern where there is a centre point, you're going to need to measure from your centre out. Now first of all I've got to decide, do I want a red stripe in the middle, or a gold stripe, or do I want one of these bare patches, because this is a raised fabric here in the middle. I'm going to choose, I hope I'm going to choose to have a gold one in the middle with 2 reds either side. But in order to find out if I can do that on the edge of my fabric, if you remember, my width from side to side was 22 inches or 56 centimetres. So I need to know that I can find the inches on my tape measure. I like to use when I'm on a cutting table with fabric, I like to use a solid rule, not one of these which can stretch or curl. So half of 22 inches is 11. So if I look at that, if I use my selvage, I could actually make a cushion cover with the gold in the middle and the red either side, if I just use my selvage. And I think I'm going to do that because my widest point is the widest bit at the front, so I should have room to do that. So when I decide where my middle is going to be, which in my case I want to be the middle of this gold area, it might not be the right place from top to bottom, but I know at least from side to side, the centre of those pins will be my 11 inches in from the edge. And then I'll have my 11 inches, which will take me, it actually takes me to just there on my fabric. I hope you can see that. Okay, and now my measurement from front to back was 21 inches or 53 centimetres. So that's 10.5. So from my centre pin, I can go 10.5 to the middle there, to my 21 inches there. And that's how big I need my piece of fabric cut. I've got a line here, so I'm going to choose this one first of all to do my line down here. I've got a guide with the red line. It's wise actually to get a square of some sort, so that you can square off your fabric here. And I'll check this before I cut it, that it is square to the side. I'm putting a square along my selvage, and then I shall cut that piece out. Yes, I'm just checking to make sure I have drawn a straight line with my squares, and I have. Now, I need to mark the centre of my fabric. Do you remember we marked the centre of our calico? And we've got a centre mark on the wood of the frame of the seat. So only do a small nick, just a tiny one, because you could be doing this on something where you've barely got enough fabric, or you want to put that against show wood. And a great big nick means you can't use the fabric until it gets to about here. So just a small nick. But what I've got now is the centre. Now the other thing I need to know is there is a nap on this fabric, in that it's got a velvet stripe in it. And the nap runs this way. Now what that means is that that would be the back of my seat, and the nap runs towards the front. If I put it on the other way round, with the nap at the back, you would see the colour change probably when I did that, and I pull the nap towards me. Every time someone slides off the seat, you'll see how much they would mark it, and how soon it would get very marked and wouldn't look very nice at all. So the idea is that the fabric, the nap of the fabric, runs off from the back to the front of the seat. Now this is my seat that I prepared with my skim wadding on top, sitting very nicely. And square as neat as I can get that on top. I'm putting that in the centre as near as I can. I'll find out more when I turn it over. Yes, I just want to make sure that these marks are heading, as you see, towards the marks I originally had on my calico. In this case I can't see them, So in fact I'll bring it up because I've trimmed my calico there, and I bring it up so that I can see it and they're matching. So I'm going to start just the same way as I did with the calico, by pulling it on to the back of the seat. Now you've done most of your pulling and tugging when you put your calico on. So although we want this tight, you actually don't need to do so much pulling and tugging. So starting in the middle, I'm not knocking my tacks home, I'm giving myself a chance to be able to move them easily and tighten them if I want to. So I'm just running them across the back. And at this stage, you know, there really is no pulling to do. I'm just following that edge along the edge of the chair, because the back of this chair is absolutely straight. And then I'm going to turn it around, again making sure my marker's in the right place, and then I'm going to just put my hand very firmly on the seat, very firmly. I'm pressing quite hard to take out any excess fabric to bring that onto the front. And that's why if you've got a nap it's better to fix the back first, because I'm running with the nap to pull that tight. It wouldn't do the fabric much good if I pulled against it too much. You're not, you know, if you think it's getting a bit loose, just run your hand again and make sure you're pulling that really tight. As you can see, it's starting to just run off my wood and slightly overlap it, and that's because of the shape of the seat. It's just starting to run down and slope in towards the edges. Nice and firmly on the other side. You inevitably are going to hit another tack underneath, which is what I just did then. Just pull it out and put it in a slightly different place. Don't try to knock a tack home if it's damaged, it's bent. It won't do the work and you'll just damage your wood. So you can see now we're already pulled nice and taut, very tight. There's no excess coming when I pull that from front to back. And now we've got to do the same at the sides. Now be very careful when you pull it one side or the other. We don't make this curl round. We want to keep those stripes very, very straight. So don't pull one side more than the other. Having said that, you do have to put your hand round and all from the sides, pull from the centre on the top of the seat round. Don't go all the way across. Then you're less likely to over pull it. And you'll see, because it's narrowing at the back, the fabric is actually coming in at the back here. And if we've got our pad nice and square, we should find that when we come on to the other side, we've got an equal amount of the colours showing on each side. That'll be a bit of a test for us in a moment. We'll have a look. You can see it's not too bad. We've got a good amount of that gold on each side, with my nice silver gold running through the middle. And it is straight, my stripes are straight. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, before we knock those tacks home, we're going to deal with the corners. We'll do the front ones first, which are in the same manner as you did the lining, but the back ones are tackled very differently, so I'll do those last. So if you remember, your front ones are taking it over from the corner and bringing that in. Now this is quite thick fabric, so I've got to make sure I do cut enough away. Again, straight into another tack. It's going to be more dangerous now. We're on corners where we've actually got 3 tacks already in this corner. Now I've knocked that one home, as you'll notice. Then I take my small pair of scissors, small cuts, small mistakes, nice and sharp at the point, and I cut in from the corner up to my tack, exactly the same way. And then my next cut's going to be right to the edge of the wood, just there. So it's like a Y, and it's going to Y out to the edge of my wood. And it's going to do exactly the same on this side. So I have this sort of shape. It was like that. You can see how I've cut it that way. Now again, more so with this thick fabric, I don't want to tuck all of this fabric underneath because it would just create so much bulk. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut some away. I may cut more away later, but I'll just check it now. Now you can see that I've got very little tucked under there, but I'm still not happy with it. I could actually take just a bit more away, because as I said, it's very thick fabric, and that's not going to do any harm at all, taking that piece away. And then knock one home there, and again here. I can knock one home there. And now I'm going to cut through that centre line from that corner. If you remember, we did that before on the calico lining. Just going to make sure I've cut enough away on this, on the centre line. And now I can work on this one. And again, I need to cut some away. Again, I'm just trying it. You can try it as many times as you like. It doesn't hurt to keep trying. You can always cut more away later. But I know I don't need that piece. Certainly don't need it. Now, on the top fabric, you do have to just tuck away. You do have to just tuck that under there. You've got some lining to go on it, but you don't want to have any frayed areas. Now you can see we've got a nice neat corner there. There's a chunk out of mine, as you know, that goes in, fits in there quite tight. And the only extra fold I've got is a very thin piece there and there. And if I want to make sure they're not going to be a problem, you can even give them a bit of a tap on the wood with your hammer to make them go in really tight. Now I have to do the other corner in exactly the same way. So we've got our front corners done, now we need to do the back ones. Now these are what you call a square corner, so they're slightly different. So what we do is you take that, your hand there, and see how that, you can see I haven't got that in tight enough there. So the first thing I'm going to do is take that one out, and then I'm making sure I'm pulling that over as far as I possibly can. I can even alter that one as well. That's what I'm going to do. If I had these in my mouth, I'd have more control on my tacks, but for the sake of the video, I'm not giving you bad habits. So I'm following now all the way to the top, and just keep making sure that's coming round as tight as it'll possibly go, because that's the secret of this corner, is to pull that round very, very tight. And my last tack is almost on the edge of the wood. Just going to knock those last 3 home. Don't like the way that one's sitting, so I'm actually going to change that one. I've slightly bent it. Well, maybe not. I'll try it again. Pull that in tight. When you're doing these drop-in seats, you often need to lean them over like this, because otherwise they bounce up and down as you're working on them. Now I'm going to cut off, remember I said we're all right with this selvage, it's not interfering at all, and it's certainly not at the back. So I'm going to take that off all the way up now, right up close to my tacks, getting just a bit closer. Okay, so I'm right up close to my last tack there. Then I'm going to follow, hope you can see, I'm going to follow the edge of my wood almost a millimetre to the corner, the back corner. You can see that, it's very, very close. And I've cut it off level with the back of the wood. And then I'm going to cut a V where the wood is on top there, and place a tack into that V and knock it home. That's nice and tight down there, knocked home. And you can start to see then what's going to happen, because if I then pull that round, you can see I'm heading for a nice square corner there, but I've still got far too much fabric here. So about from where the top of the V was cut, if I cut that off and pull that back under, I even feel I can cut a little bit more of that V off. You just test it, you'll see. If you can do it without anything sticking out, be very brave. Now you can see we've got a nice square corner there. Now I've got a bit of a problem here, because if I bring that down, I want to bring my bottoming over these folds, and it's going to come a bit, it's going to take my bottoming too close to that edge there. So in order to make this suddenly turn in that way, what you have to do is you have to look at the point at which it meets that piece of wood, and you cut out a V that's deeper on this side than the other side. And so as it meets that piece of wood there, it allows you to turn it in and come in the chair a bit more. Okay, you don't have to do that particular cut, but it does help you when you come to putting your bottoming on and covering that piece of fabric so that it doesn't stick out the side here. Nice and tight there. Put one more tack in there. And now we've not got too much fabric here at all, and we've certainly only got a V of fabric here, which again, if you just give that a tap on top, it's going to go in, it makes it sit down very, very tight. We're going to do the other corner the same. Now we're going to put on the bottoming of the seat. As you see, we've finished it here. I've knocked home all my tacks. Make sure they are knocked home well, or they'll cut through your fabric. I've got one there with an edge sticking out, and it just needs to make sure that that's home well. This wood is very, very hard on this frame, which is what it should be. They're very old. Now, my fabric was fire retardant, my calico was fire retardant, my skim wadding was inherently fire retardant, and my bottoming is fire retardant. As I said, I prefer to be safe with these things. So I've got a piece of fabric, I've cut it so that it's just about wide enough. It's about 1 inch bigger, top and bottom there, and at my widest point here. Now again, find your middle, which is what we did on everything. We know where our middle is. On our seat, it's there and there. And now I know where the middle is on this as well. I'm just going to line it up with it. And it does help to keep everything square. And then this is just simply a case of turning this under. Fire retardant cotton lining, as this is, does a nice neat fold very easily. and you can run it along the edge, and you want it to be about that far from the edge. Now you can do this with coloured gimp pins, or you can do it with small tacks. You can use probably quarters, something with a nice small head, and put them in about 1 inch apart. Don't go all the way into your corners, use your trick. Corners are last, taking in all the surplus. So middle to sides again. Top of a tack or a hard piece of wood, I think there. Could be a knot in the wood. And they're quite short, so they're not taking a lot of knocking home. And then turn it around and pull it nice and tight and work out where your fold's going to be for this side. If you've got a bit of a serpentine front, you may find when you fold it back you have to put some V's in the part that you fold back in order to make it turn under and turn that corner. You'll easily see it needs it when you try to turn it under. An angle I can see it, and I might see what I'm doing. There we go. You can hear how hard this wood is as these go in, so my first hit has to be quite firm. Sometimes these old seats can have some very hard wood in them. Which is good, but sometimes it can dry out. You want reasonably neat underneath, because when people pick up chairs, often a drop-in seat will drop out, and it's nice to be able to turn it over and see something neat. The other reason for putting a bottoming on is if you can keep UV light and dust out of your webbing and your inside of your filling, you will actually find that the seat filling and everything and your webbing will last longer. So this is not just for decoration, it is by way of protection. So I'm just trimming this back so that I don't turn too much under, again for too much bulk, as you can see. And then at the corners I'm cutting out excess again, so that I'm not turning too much under. Okay, and you can see there I could actually cut out some more. I could actually cut the whole corner off, and the same that side, which will help when I turn it back. You won't see it. Because of this square piece out the corner here, what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to cut that off a bit more and just turn it back a little, because we don't want it sticking out of the corner, and I don't want too much fabric there. There we go. So again, start in the middle. And you haven't got to stretch this, but you do want it nice and tight. And you can knock these home straight away, because you're not going to move this once it's in. It's in. If you're a little unsure, you can knock them in a bit later, but there's nothing to stop you knocking them in straight away. And as you can see, then you can go up to your corner. finish the last one in the corner. If your wood's a little delicate on the corners, just be careful when you put these last ones in. Okay, and then I'm going to finish it down, trim this side off. And then the last few on this side. You have it. That's your drop-in seat, neatly finished off.